In this Elden Ring Nightreign video, I'm going to be showing you my Duchess build, what I like to use when playing Duchess. I'm going to give you guys a couple more tips from Duchess, as well as show you a run through and kind of explain what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, to help you guys make better decisions about what you're doing when you're playing Duchess, hopefully. So the first thing to talk about with Duchess is that her starting weapon can be outfitted with so many different things in this game that it can become a very reliable weapon for her, kind of like Iron Eye's bow, in the sense that you can put whatever elements on, you can put status effects on it, and since daggers attack so quickly, they're really good at building up status effects, and restage can contribute to that. So it's definitely possible to set up your starting weapon so that you can accomplish what you need to accomplish in a run without having to switch to other weapons. So definitely keep that in mind. There are a lot of good relics. We're going to go through some of those relics in a minute. The other thing is, don't get so reliant on your dagger by setting it up with all of your relics that you never pick up a better weapon. Sometimes you get gifted really good weapons. Like, there are better weapons than your starting dagger out there. Like, if you get like Eleanor's Pole Blade or some other really, really good weapon, you may want to use that that's not a dagger. Maybe you get a Nagakiba and it's got poison on it and it just works really well for you. So don't just think that you can only use daggers, and try not to set all of your relics up to prioritize that one weapon unless you're facing a very specific boss and you know that's the best way to beat it. So typically when you're playing Duchess, you have the conundrum of, do you use a dagger and a staff, or do you like dual wield daggers? Obviously, if you get some other good weapon, that changes the way you're building, but let's just say you don't, for the sake of argument, that you're going to be trying to decide, do I use a staff and a dagger, or do I use two daggers? So the advantage of Duchess is that she can cast spells effectively because she has A intelligence, not as good as Recluse, obviously. But if she comes across a good staff with some good spells, like Ricard's Rancor on it, or a Rancor Call, Ancient Death Rancor, a number of other spells, there is a case to be made for her picking up that staff and at least putting it in her back pocket for later in case she might need it. It might be that the enemy is weak to fire and you could have some fire spells, or maybe you just have difficulty dodging some of the attacks of a particular boss and you can use range in that case. This is absolutely one of the strengths of Duchess, and you shouldn't write off spells completely, although I'm not convinced that you should just lean into spells either. Now, the advantage of dual wielding daggers is that you can use your weapon skill more easily, right? Because the weapon that's in your right hand, when you hit L2, it's going to use that weapon skill. So if you have a really strong weapon skill on there, you can just trigger it with L2. You can do dual wield attacks, so you might have one status effect in one hand and a different status effect in another, so you can trigger multiple status effects from dual wielding. And that can be a really strong setup, and I tend to prioritize like a dual wield type setup over the staff and dagger, simply because if I have a good skill like I do in this build, I want to be able to use that skill liberally, and when I have a staff on the other hand, I either have to two-hand that weapon really quickly or switch off to a dagger in order to be able to use it, and I don't want to waste the time doing either of those things when I'm zipping around the screen. So talking about weapon priorities for a second, when I'm looking at what weapons to pick up for Duchess, it follows a similar pattern as a lot of other characters, but it's a little different. First of all, does it have Scarlet Rot, yes or no? Any Scarlet Rot is an automatic pickup, even if I'm giving it to someone else, simply because it just makes your life so much easier. The next question is it a dagger or not? Since daggers allow you to use the dual wield moveset with L1 or LB more effectively than if you had different weapons, you can't really do that. You're definitely checking to see if it's a dagger. So that's the second priority. If it doesn't have Scarlet Rot, is it a dagger? Can you use it in dual wield, etc.? The next thing to take a look at is, does it have bleed? If it's a dagger that has bleed, you'll absolutely want this. I like to put this in my offhand immediately so I can trigger blood loss when I dual wield daggers, or I can, switch to it if I know an enemy is particularly weak to blood. You can do that as well. The next question is, does it have an element that matches the final boss we're facing? And I find that this is lower on the list than maybe it would be for other classes, simply because bleed is so strong on a dagger when you can attack so rapidly that it'll get you through your run more easily, and then you can worry about the final boss after that. And typically, the other members in your party are probably going to have elements that match that boss, so it's not the end of the world if you don't find the dagger that doesn't have one. Obviously, you should be trying to get one, though. The next question is, what is the weapon skill on it? Does it have something I can use at range? Does it give me some AoE? Does it have a better skill than what I have currently? That's what I look at next. You want to prioritize the other things first, but sometimes a weapon with a really good weapon skill, like Black Knife or something, is just so good you can't pass it up. And lastly, I look at passive effect. There are not a lot of passive effects that are going to help Duchess, but there's some out there. I like health back, like over time, or on repeated strikes, or I just like health on killing enemies, or I like damage negation on successive attacks to prevent damage to me. There are, obviously if you can get like glint blades or something like that, that's really strong. But a lot of times the passive effects are just not super good for Duchess. If you can get the one that boosts your damage with dual wield attacks, if you're dual wielding daggers, that's good. But if you're not dual wielding daggers, it doesn't really benefit you much. So taking a look at Duchess's relics, my relics are not very well optimized. I do not have a lot of great relics for Duchess, but there are a few things that I am using this build that work really well. So the first thing is triggering restage at the end of your dagger combo, and this works both if you're single wielding a dagger or if you're dual wielding a dagger. I find I trigger this all the time. This one is really, really strong, and it can give you more restages, increasing your damage and status effect buildup on bosses, so definitely consider this one. Sometimes, you might pick up a weapon that's not a dagger and you don't get the benefit of this just because the weapon is so strong, but in that case, you factor this in. If you have this, that weapon's got to be really strong to not use a dagger. Secondly, I have a really good weapon skill on it, and this one is Hoarfrost Stomp. Hoarfrost Stomp is amazing on Duchess because a lot of people love to run Frostbite on their Duchess with like Chilling Mist, and then maybe have like Poison on it or Bleed on it and get 2 status effects, which is also really good. If you don't have Hoarfrost Stomp, I kind of highly recommend Chilling Mist. But I really love Hoarfrost Stomp because it gives you some AoE on Duchess, and it also allows you to attack at range safely in some cases while still putting the Frostbite status effect. You can put on multiple enemies simultaneously, so it's really, really good. Hit restage and then just wipe out a pack of enemies. It's really strong. Next things to look out for are standard attack damage, or standard damage and dagger damage. Standard attack damage is your R1 spam, so this is really good. For Duchess, generally she's spamming R1 trying to get that restage to trigger and trying to apply status effects. Do that a lot. Dagger damage applies to all your different attacks with daggers. It's a little bit less damage overall, but it applies to all different dagger types rather than standard attack, which is just your R1s. Other things I look out for are Vigor. I feel like when I'm playing Duchess, she always feels so squishy to me compared to other classes, and I'm not the greatest Duchess compared to some of the other classes. I play them a lot better than Duchess. But having extra health on Duchess can really allow you to play her more aggressively. It can prevent you from getting one-shotted even if you're almost dead, you're at least not dead. And it can also help you learn the class while you're like making mistakes and not die all the time, so that's really strong. And another one that I really like is Stamina Back on attacking. Because you attack so much with Duchess, getting Stamina Back can allow you to pull off more combos and keep swinging a lot of times, which is really strong as well. Or even Endurance or Max Stamina, either of those, getting you more stamina is good as well. Okay, so on to the run. In this run, I'm playing Duchess, Fex is playing Recluse, and we have a random raider in the group. I think it was from the Fextra community password. Pretty good raider nonetheless, so that worked out really well. And I find Duchess plays a little bit better when you have at least one other melee character. I don't know if other people experience that as well, but it seems like she plays better when you have another melee character. So on this run, we're taking on the Equilibrious Beast, who can be a bit of a bitch sometimes, if I must say. And the first thing we do is we drop in, we clear out the enemies. You can see the Hoarfrost Stomp putting in work there. I get like 4 enemies with 1 use. And then we level up to level 2 quickly before heading to the nearby fort in order to hopefully get Fex some spells since she's playing Recluse. So once we get inside, it's an abductor version. It's right there by the front door. I put down a couple Hoarfrost Stomps. We dispatch this thing very, very quickly. The AoE is so good for fights like this because it can just wipe out packs of enemies, keeping you safe. So checking the rewards for the boss, I see a Bloodstained Dagger. I immediately put this in my left hand. That way I can dual wield and do some bleed buildup as well when I'm not Hoarfrost Stomping. And this is just nice to really have in general. You could put this in your right hand as well and just rotate to it when you want to do bleed buildup in single hand. But I just leave it in the offhand dual wield. So then we quickly head up to the top of the fort. I check the chest for the Stone Sword key, and there are 2 in there, and Fex is checking the staffs and the clue to see if there are any good staffs for her. So we decide to head to a nearby church, and it's a mausoleum night. There are a group of enemies walking by, and I just decide for fun to Hoarfrost Stomp them. You can't even frostbite these guys, but they still go down very, very quickly while I'm waiting for my team to catch up, getting some easy runes for us. If you had the relic that replenished your ultimate when defeating enemies, you'd probably be way past full by this point. So you could also use that on Duchess with this kind of setup, and it would work really, really well. So we run down to the Mausoleum Knight, and I drop down some more Hoarfrost Stomps, but he keeps just disappearing and vanishing. Even when I'm attacking, he's disappearing. So this fight takes a lot longer than it should have. It's just kind of annoying when you face this guy, but he goes down pretty quick anyway. So checking out my rewards when defeating the boss, we do have successive attacks negate damage, so I have that on there. That way, if I'm like attacking wildly into a boss, and he hits me, I can take less damage. So then we head to the nearby church on the outskirts in order to get our first flask of the day. There is a starlight shard there that pops up in the chest, so I mark it for Fex, and she will probably want this at some point. We then decide to move east to the Frenzied Flame Camp, and we move through the lake there. I like to look for scarabs on the way. I don't notice any, and I can see that the boss in the lake is an ulcerated tree spirit, so we decide to ignore it for a while. So when we get to the Frenzied Flame Camp, I Hoarfrost Stomp a couple enemies while I'm waiting for them to catch up. Then we get up to the Troll, I Hoarfrost Stomp a couple of times, hit Restage, go to town with dual wield tax, and that's pretty much a wrap on that boss. So for my rewards, there's not really a lot of good options. I decided to take the Resistances since we're fighting the Equilibrious Beast, and he has a lot of Frenzy buildup in that fight sometimes. So I figured it can help me there. We then make our way to a nearby rise and to the Everjail there. Fex has got a key too. She decides to go open the Everjail, even though we don't have a lot of time to beat it. That way we can get better rewards on day 2 with half the health on the boss. I stay behind at the rise trying to open it. I find the opening fairly quickly, and I'm able to get up to the top, and she's able to get back there and pick up her reward too. So for rewards from the Rise, there's not a lot of great options for me, but there is a decent staff for Fex with Magma Shot and Great Blade Phalanx on it, so I grab that and drop it for her. So after this, we decide to run to the other Rise, and the symbol that needs to be broken is above the doorway. My Hoarfrost Stomp obviously can't reach, but Fex is able to range it down, and our Raider is climbing up the side to break it, but she does it even before he does. So then we climb up to the top of the Rise, and taking a look at the rewards, there are not a lot of great options for me again. There's some staffs. One of the staffs is similar, but it has Night Comet instead of the other spell that it had. I'm debating whether the Crystal Staff would be good, but I don't think she's going to use those spells, so I just grabbed the Cerulean Flask there and decide she might want this at some point. We're then making our way to the church in the lake to pick up a second flask. We decide to stop by the mine first, though. I'm planning on probably using this dagger for the whole run because Hoarfrost Stomp is working. I want to upgrade it so I can get some more damage with my regular attacks and also with Hoarfrost Stomp. So we decide to head in there in order to do this really quickly before the Nightreign gets in there. So once we get into the Troll, I Hoarfrost Stomp a couple of times and then start dual-wielding attacking, but I'm out of stamina, so it goes a little bit slower than I expected. Hit Restage. The boss goes down not too long after that from a Hemorrhage proc, and we pick up a Smithing Stone. Then we make our way outside and head over to the church in order to get that second flask. I don't normally try and get 2 flasks on day 1, but the way it kind of worked out makes sense to get in this case. So after this, we kill a Scarab, get another Talisman, and then head to the nearby Everjail. Since we still have 3 Stone Sword keys between Fex and myself, there is a Grave Warden Duelist. I Hoarfrost Stomp a couple of times, and he gets Frostbite on him. Then I dual wield attack, use Restage, and do some more dual wield attacks, and he goes down real fast. You can see how fast the Hemorrhage procs are triggering even with only 1 bleed weapon. And for wards, I take the max health increase. Again, I like having a lot of health on Duchess. She has one of the lower health pools, and she's playing in melee. And if you can get enough health that you don't get one-shotted, you can learn a lot from your mistakes. And also, just not going down sometimes can win you a lot of fights where, you know, if you had to keep picking someone up or they had to keep picking you up, you can lose. So after this, we head to the center castle. I'm not actually trying to go into the castle. The circle is closing, but I want to get to the merchant because I want to buy another smithing stone so I can upgrade my dagger to blue, and then I have the purple so I can upgrade it to purple really quickly. That way I can have a purple dagger by the end of day 1, which is pretty good. Afterwards, we're just kind of running to the end of day area. I'm killing some enemies on the way. When we get there, it's the hands. I hate these things so much. Fex asked me if anyone has fire. I'm like, no, I have frost though. And luckily, Hoarfrost Stomp seems to do pretty good against these guys, and they go down pretty quickly. You'll also notice I go invisible to kill them because I have the relic that increases your attack power when you defeat enemies while you're stealth, and you can see the 3 sword below my stamina bar giving me extra damage for this fight. So once the Centipede Demon spawns, I let him get away with his jump before I start doing Hoarfrost Stomp to put Frostbite on him, which reduces his resistances, by the way, so that's going to make us deal more damage to him in general. But there is no cold damage, so Hoarfrost Stomp is dealing magic damage, and obviously that's not a terrible damage type against Centipede Demon compared to like fire or something like that. But one of the things I absolutely love in this fight as we get further on is Fex buffs us with infinite FP. As you can see the blue glowing on myself as his health bar gets lower. And when this happens, I can just spam Hoarfrost Stomp at will and not have to worry about my FP. And this happens several times during our run, and you can take advantage of it. If you have something like Chilling Mist, you can't really take advantage of that because you're not going to just spam Chilling Mist over and over and over because it's not really dealing damage. Whereas Hoarfrost Stomp is, so it just works out really well. So for end of day rewards, I got terrible ones. I have thrusting counterattack. I don't have a thrusting weapon. I'm not really doing poison or scarlet rot. I don't have any of those weapons. And violent deluge of stars when walking usually happens for me when I'm doing my flask and is sporadic. So it's not the greatest. I decided to take it because it's the best of the bunch. If you had poison or scarlet rot, this would be a no-brainer to take the healing. That way you could heal yourself while you're triggering these on, bosses. Definitely that would have been the better one, but that's not the build that I have set up with here. So after the day 1 boss ends, Fex noted before that there was a Royal Revenant boss over here that's not too difficult, so we decide to head over as the Nightreign is ending. Unfortunately, it's kind of foggy still, and Fex yeets herself off a cliff and had a good laugh about it. So then we get to the Royal Revenant. I Hoarfrost Stomp it a few times. It's doing its AoE attack where it shoots out like explosions and things like that, projectiles, so staying at a safe distance is good. I quickly have the boss on me because of the amount of damage I did. So I start dodging away, get out of range, start putting some Hoarfrost Stomps into it again when it gets on the Raider there. Kind of just getting it in like over and over and over. It's doing really well. I have FP to spare. I might as well use it. And I'm waiting for my opportunity to get into melee attack, but I just don't really need it. So I just keep Hoarfrost Stomping, kind of cheese the boss down. This is one of those bosses that can swing erratically and can really kill you, like if you're playing Duchess normally, and it just like a couple hits like in succession can take you down. So I was playing a little cautious with Hoarfrost Stomp, and obviously it was dealing plenty of damage, so it was not a problem. So when it comes to rewards, there are a couple of blood weapons, but none are the one I would normally use. The Twin Blade wouldn't be bad to take if you want to use a Twin Blade on Duchess, but I have kind of a good setup going, and I just upgraded my weapon, so it's probably a no-go for me. Runes would not be bad, but I decided maybe the Raider might want the Monk's Blood Flame Blade, so he can have a bleed weapon, so I pick it up and drop it for him. So as we head towards the center, Fex drops me a Naga Kiba on it, and the Naga Kiba is not probably a weapon I'm going to use. You absolutely can use it on Duchess, but I have a really good setup. But it'd be a good way to get bleed with good reach, but it does have skill damage on it, and I want more Hoarfrost damage. So I pick it up and just keep it in my inventory, and you decide I can use it if I need it. Okay, so we make our way back to the Ulcerated Tree Spirit, and this is a boss that's weak to fire, but I'm using Frost here. And I just Hoarfrost Stomp this thing to death, basically. I don't know why. Hoarfrost Stomp seems to work better on larger enemies because I think the spread hits multiple times a lot more, so it does really good. I get hit a lot during this fight, but as you notice, because I have HP, I pick up an HP passive, I have Vigor on my relics, and I'm at full HP or close to it most of the time. I'm not dying from these attacks. I'm getting close, but I'm not dying, so I'm able to withstand them. If you had lower health and you were going down right there, it would be a big burden on your team, and this fight might not be doable. So the fact that I lived through those and was able to keep fighting is good. And also it highlights one of the downsides of Hoarfrost Stomp, which is that if you get caught in an animation, you can get hit. So make sure you're using it when you're not going to get caught in an animation, ideally. Lessons learned there. For rewards, I have the Sword of St. Trino for sleep, which has reduced FP cost on it, which I could have gotten to give to Fex. That would help her a lot, but I didn't notice the spell FP cost for some reason. Saw the Grafted Dragon, thought that might be good for our Raider. It's not really a weapon they would typically use, but I'm not going to use it because my setup is going well. Or create Holy Ground at low AP, which isn't bad, but you typically don't want to be at low HP on Duchess for a very long period of time anyway, because you can just get one-tapped. So I get the Grafted Dragon and drop it, but I probably should have got the Sword of St. Trina and dropped it for Vex instead. So then we make our way to the center castle, and we have a Grafted Scion, which is not a bad boss again for this weapon's skill, because when you're using Hoarfrost Stomp, if the enemy is bigger, it's going to hit more. It's kind of a wide enemy, so it's getting hit a lot from the damage, and I'm able to stay out of reach of its erratic attacks. Grafted Scions hit with many arms at the same time, and it can catch you easily if you're playing like a melee character, and I just simply don't even have to deal with that in this case because of Hoarfrost Stomp. Our Raider does go down during this fight for just a brief second, and Fex is able to pick him up. I think my Hoarfrost Stomp did a little bit as well, and then we down the Grafted Scion. For rewards, my choices aren't that great again because I'm not using Poison or Rot. The Family Heads is good for charged sorceries, so I decided to pick this up and drop it for Fex. I then make my way up to get my Talisman, and there is a Crucible Knight there, so I dodge by him, quickly loot a Talisman from the chest. None of these choices are particularly amazing. Blood loss and frost resistance are not useful. Raise attack power and HP is low is not good. You don't want to stay at low HP. But successive attacks restore HP is something that you might do on Duchess, or a lot of Duchesses would do, because you're going to attack rapidly and it can heal you, and it does later on in this fight actually heal me. So that's good to have as well. So then I'm taking on the Crucible Knight, and I'm trying to Hoarfrost Stomp him at distance. It's kind of difficult to face a Crucible Knight with a dagger one-on-one without getting behind him. So I'm trying to trigger Frostbite and put some pressure on him with Hoarfrost Stomp. So once I trigger Frostbite, I go ahead and hit Restage, and it rips off another chunk of health off of him, and the cavalry shows up not too long after this. So not long after that, Fex drops me an Ancestral Spirit Horn, which gives me FP back when I defeat enemies, which is great for Hoarfrost Stomp. But it's not going to be super useful against like one-on-one enemies and bosses, so eventually I will swap this out with something else. So then we pull the Crucible Knight outside. I Hoarfrost Stomp it a couple times to set Frostbite. It doesn't have a shield, so it's easier to set on this type of Crucible Knight, and then we just down it really, really quickly. So for rewards, neither of these is particularly good, but I just decided to take the increased poise because I'm not going to use the Gargoyle's Twin Blade. If you needed a Twin Blade weapon, if you wanted to play with one, you could take this, but again, my setup is working well. So then we take on the other Crucible Knight outside, and you can see Fex buffs me with infinite FP again, so I can just keep Hoarfrost Stomping and not using FP. So I finally run out of FP on the next Crucible Knight, so I end up mailing a little bit more, and we take him down, and then we head down to go up the jump in order to get more Crucible Knights on top for more XP. So after downing another Crucible Knight, we get to the next boss Crucible Knight. My choices are a Great Omen Killer Cleaver, which would be great for the Raider in order to give him like blood loss buildup, or increased physical attack power. I take that in order to boost my own damage. Then we move inside and take on the other Crucible Knight, and my rewards are either 1 dagger or reduced FP consumption. This will lower the cost of my Hoarfrost Stomp, so this is a no-brainer, so I take that. So after downing another Crucible Knight, we jump across the gap, climb up the other side, hit the Site of Grace there, and finally level up, getting many, many levels from all the Crucible Knights we've defeated. So then we head to a nearby lightning ruins, and right as we get to the top, I cloak Fex and I so they don't know that we're there. This can make things a little bit easier. I like doing this in areas where there are a lot of enemies to just kind of let you start the fight that you want. We get to town attacking them with spells and Hoarfrost Stomps, and they go down very, very quickly. My choices of reward are increased health, lightning whip, or troll sword. So I take the increased health to make sure that I can't die even more. And as we make our way to the end of day boss fight, the Raider drops a Flame Drake Talisman, and I decide to drop my Ancestral Spirit Horn to pick this up, give me some fire resistance. I'm relatively certain the Equilibrious Beast does some fire damage. Frenzy attacks usually are related to fire, at least the spells are. So I feel like that'll be better because the FP back isn't going to do anything for me in that fight. So we get to the end of day trash. I do a few Hoarfrost Stomps, but I don't want to spend all my FP on them. I want to save some for the boss. So I do a little bit of meleeing here as well. Okay, so our bosses are going to be Godskin Noble and Godskin Apostle, and once the Godskin Noble spawns, the first thing I do is Hoarfrost Stomp, get Frostbite onto it quickly, do a few melee attacks, get a restage off, and then back away, because I have pretty good aggro at this point because I've done a lot of damage. And then I get another Hoarfrost Stomp into it and roll away from a lot of its repeated strikes while the teammates are kind of attacking into it. When I see it go into its animation for summoning the other one, I just attack as quickly as I can, trying to do as much damage. I'm not worried about getting hit really at this point. As soon as the Godskin Noble starts rolling around, I use our Invis to put everyone in Viz to give us a little bit of free time to attack without the Godskin Apostle being on us. You can see it kind of wandering around, slowly making its way towards Vex while we go to town on the Godskin Noble. We just get it down really, really quickly. So once Godskin Apostle is left, I Hoarfrost Stomp it a couple times to get the Frostbite status effect on it. Then I start meleeing attack. I get restage on it and back away, do some more Hoarfrost Stomps while it's like exploding. And then we down it not too long after that. So for my choice of rewards, I have increased maximum FP, increased physical damage negation, or lightning upon dodge. All of these are really good. FP would be good for more Hoarfrost Stomps. The protection would be good from getting hit, but obviously when you're playing Duchess, you'd want to try not to get hit with your dodges. and getting extra damage from lightning when dodging just seemed like the best choice, but you really couldn't have gone wrong with any of them. You could make a case for any of them. So when we get to the end of day area, I level up again and drop my stone sword keys. Those won't be useful. I buy Fex some starlight shards because she says she needs them, and then we head into the boss fight. When we get to Libra, I don't actually make a deal with him. I never make a deal with Libra. I haven't spent the time to go look and see what all the positive and negative effects are, so I generally just pass to make sure I'm not getting something unexpected and ruin a good run by picking a terrible buff. So once the fight starts, I drop down a couple Hoarfrost stomps and I get Frostbite on Libra almost instantly. Then I dodge out of the way of his AoE, put in a couple more Hoarfrost stomps while he teleports, and then try and get up and close the distance on him so I can get in some melee attacks. And then he's aggroed onto me, he gets me with an AoE, then a couple melee attacks, and I don't go down though. I have enough health to survive, which is the most important thing, so I'm able to heal up. And then the boss kind of stays on me for a bit. You'll see I dodged barely a couple AoEs where I literally at the last second dodge. That's really one of the strengths of Duchess, is her iframes on her dodges are really strong, so I'm able to not get hit by both of those attacks. So then during his trance, we managed to break his shields in time, and then he kind of goes into a full-blown rage, which he does when you do this. I decided this would be a good time to cloak everyone, not only because of the iframes on the animation in case he jumps at me, but also because I figured if he can't lock onto anyone, then maybe this phase, we can pass part of this phase without getting attacked. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work. I think he was already aggroed onto Corey, in an attack animation pattern, and he goes down, so we pick him up not long after that. And then I see that Frostbite has worn off on the Equilibrious Beast, so I start Hoarfrost stomping and it dashes wildly away. And this is one of the great things about Hoarfrost Stomp during this fight, is that sometimes you can just take damage when you're in melee range from this guy because he just instantly charges in a direction and you get hit. You can avoid some of that by using this skill. And then you can see I get hit by an AoE flipping away, and I actually heal up here even though I have about 60% health still. And that's because if I get hit by a hit, and it takes that and I'm down, that puts my team in a bad position, and I would rather survive a hit and not go down and kind of maybe use a flask a little bit early than the alternative. So then when the Equilibrious Beast goes into a trance the second time, our Raider wisely uses his ultimate and just busts through it. And then I'm waiting to pick my opportunity to engage him here. He's moving erratically. He got thrown into a weird series of patterns because he kind of got stuck in the Raider's ultimate. So I'm waiting to figure out what he's going to do before I can predict his movements and attack. So once his rage phase ends, we move in and get the attack on him, and his health is going down quickly at this point. So fortunately for us, he does a third trance. We don't have a way to break it, so he gets buffed from it as he completes it, but his health is so low by the time that he comes out that it actually works in our favor, and we down him not long after that. So that wraps up my video on playing Duchess. This is kind of how I play Duchess. Hoarfrost Stomp was a game changer for me on her. I know a lot of people like to use Frostbite. Frostbite is very, very effective with Chilling Mist and things like that, and there are other status effects that are really, really good. I would just say make sure that you have a weapon for the boss that you're facing. For instance, if you're facing the last boss, they're immune to bleed and poison. You're going to have a backup of some kind of, damage that you can do holy or something like that, or you're going to have a hard time with that fight. Or maybe have a weapon skill like Blade of Calling or something like from the Black Knife that you can just use it range safely when you need to, so that you can still deal damage when you can't be in melee range, and then you can get in melee range when it's safer. Again, I am not the world's strongest Duchess player. It's probably one of my weakest characters in terms of my own personal performance, but this build works very, very well. And I think if you're a new Duchess out there or a Duchess player, you should strongly consider putting it together. As always, if you have other tips about this run or Duchess in general, things I shouldn't have done in this run, things I should have done differently, or if you have questions about things that I did that I didn't explain well, you can leave a comment and I will try and answer it as soon as I can.